there's a proposed agenda which ABS pulled together, and it sounds very sensible, really. So, I mean, I think where we were last time was that we had a productive discussion with everybody feeling that this is something that may be building on the existing MDT meeting that um, is well attended by some organisations and less well attended by other organisations, that takes place on a Thursday morning and has been largely organised by um, the people working, largely organised by and people working for by LCH. But then also it sounds as if one of the GP practices was attending, but maybe the others weren't. So it was really just a matter of probably building on that. Um, the other thing that had happened was that a list of 50 patients or 48 patients had been shared amongst the GP practices, which was the patients who were the top 10% attenders at GP surgeries and the top 10% attenders at A&E. And that was across the patch of about 36,000 patients. That was actually 48 patients out of that 36,000. That list has been shared. It's been shared with the practices. We've all had a chance to have a little look at that and reflect on what that patient group looked like. So we can discuss that. And it was really just to just to maybe sort of have a think about what we were going to do next and what it might all look like. So I hope that seems reasonable. I've been, Victoria, sorry.
Yeah, just was going to ask Francis, with regards to that list that's been shared, the 48 patients, is there going to be something set up between the GP practices and LCH, so whether it's the matrons, to try and identify if we've got common patients in common on that list?
Yes, yes. I mean, I think, the list was only really shared about 10 days ago. We've sort of had a chance to have a look at it. I mean, clearly, the whole idea of this is that we're, I mean, just in terms of, I mean, the feedback of that list is that there's 48 patients. It'd be interesting to know when that data was pulled together, because about a third of them are now deceased. Because and that probably doesn't come as too much surprise, because obviously the patients who are in A&E, I mean, certainly with our Wetherby being Wetherby, I guess the frailest and the people who are making the maximum use of healthcare services will be incredibly frail and often with limited life expectancy. So, gathering data like that, those patients they're going to be on a limited lifespan. Now, it'd be interesting to know exactly when that list was compiled, because I suppose it does. So between a quarter and a third were deceased, and then the rest of them looked like the sort of patients you would expect to be on the list. In other words, obviously you get a list like that, the concern is that it's going to be a bunch of patients that you've never heard of and you're thinking, who are these people? But that wasn't the case. They were completely the sort of people we're thinking, right, okay, well, we've done 16 visits on you this week. And so I think the list, obviously the searches do appear to be correct, but I think there's definitely an issue with, if we are doing searches of that nature, we've got to get them done quickly. We've got to get the data out to the practices quickly. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of a third of the patients it's going to be too late for, in a way. So yeah, I mean, that's the feedback on that. I'm not sure how much use that is, in a way. I mean, I can certainly share the patient list with anybody at LCH. I mean, I don't think, but I guess that particular list is probably it's probably not that relevant, because if we're gonna set this up, we're gonna have to come up with a much more up-to-date list, I suppose, aren't we, really? And start, and maybe what we do need to be thinking about is how we, I think what I've probably taken from that is that we've got to get, if we are doing searches on these patients, if we are doing searches on these patients, we've got to get the data out very quickly. Or is that where our list is going to come from? Do we use that as the list? Or do we kind of use that as a starting point, and then, bring our own patients that we feel of, are in significant need of kind of clear sort of case, case by case, intensive management. But I'm grateful for everyone's thoughts on that. I don't know. Rachel?
Yeah, I think I was just sort of sharing what's been happening to some of the other LCPs, exactly the same, that they have very much been sort of led by the data and working through that list, then also making room for more reactive cases. So patients, people that the team are concerned about. And I think good neighbourhood health lends itself to both those things. So that population health management, but also insights from you guys sort of working hard on the front line. So I think in terms of their case management and MDT meetings, they've been making space for both of those type of approaches. So yeah, just to confirm, others are thinking similarly, but of course, yeah, starting with the data.
That's sort of pragmatic, isn't it? And that sounds sensible, certainly. Fiona?
Yeah, I was going to agree with the same sort of thing, Francis. And I think that, like you mentioned earlier, building on from the MDT meetings that we have on a Thursday, that's certainly how that's kind of structured now, is the high intensity patients, certainly from an LCH perspective, and more complex cases as well. So yeah, a bit of both sounds like a way forward.
Good. So it sounds like we're all roughly agreed on that. Okay. So moving on, I mean, what do we, have we had any more thoughts at all on what we would want the MDT meeting to look like? Well, firstly, yeah, what do we want? I mean, I guess the obvious thing is that we probably just need to have another little recap on what the meeting is currently doing at the moment. Sorry, Kat.
Yeah. I just thought maybe I know we already have our monthly sort of meeting, but would it be worth inviting all of the GP practices to an MDT approach of us all talking about what would work best for everybody, and what days, and we can just discuss it. It could be just a brief half an hour meetup where we decide what would work for sort of the majority, hopefully everybody that could attend. Because I know that sometimes emails sort of like get sent out and they don't necessarily get read, or if we sort of like got everyone's heads together and sort of saw what everyone's ideas were, that might be worthwhile. Or Victoria, before, when we've done the prescribing forum, we sent out a sort of like ideas thing to everybody, didn't we, to see what would work for people.
An MS
would that be
Forms
helpful? I don't know.
questionnaire.
Yeah. Just because we want everyone to be on board and we want everyone to be proactive, don't we? And work as a team, and not just. I think if people are on the same page and understand what's going on, and we can have a very open discussion, it might be useful if all of the GPs attended. That's just my thoughts.
I totally agree, Kat. Really important that everybody is invested and signed up to this. I mean, we have had, I mean, certainly, since the last meeting, we've met as a PCN at least twice. And people are keen to be involved in this. And I mean, I think, the sign up, I've got so far would be that each practice is happy to send a care coordinator and a lead GP to an MDT meeting. And I think probably, I guess that hopefully would be sufficient to at least start. I think it's unlikely we would get all GPs, but certainly a lead kind of a lead frailty GP, if you like, or somebody like that would certainly, practices are happy with that as a concept, certainly. So I don't think that's, we should be fine for that. And if that sounds like sufficient practice representation, then that shouldn't be a problem. And I think,
good.
yeah, it does. Yeah, good. I mean, all I would say is that to allow it to happen, it's probably, and this has been the feedback from all the practices, if it could happen at a lunchtime, that would be good. That would make it easier. And people were wondering about Thursday lunchtime, given that you're already doing it on a Thursday. But that's, I mean, I know Sonia from the ICB had said she was willing to try and pull that together. I think she's been a bit flat out with a few other bits at the moment, but so she is getting to that. But Rachel?
Yeah, I know Sonia had sent apologies for today, but very keen to sort of be involved and help and knit it all together. But just I love that sort of commitment to sort of co-design that Kat brought forward, and just whether in the spirit of sort of the local care partnership working, I know you probably want to keep that group sort of small and pragmatic, but whether perhaps adult social care could be involved in sort of co-design as well, or we extend that out to third sector, or think about third sector as we're doing that. It was just, an ask that we consider the whole MDT.
I mean, that's what is the next question, isn't it? Is who's on the meeting, who's in the MDT, and what does it look like? Is it Teams, face to face? How what is it? I guess, Fiona.
Just on time wise, is the proposition that these meetings will be on a monthly basis or more regularly?
It has not been proposed really. I guess that's what we're discussing today in a way. And
I only ask because I think of like the kind of ward round sort of structure that the geriatricians follow in a lot of sort of the community care beds or the care homes, and that works quite well in a sort of short kind of swift day to day on a weekly basis. So I don't know whether that would be something we could trial. I know the case management things that we run currently on a monthly basis, great, but we do get GPs that do attend from sort of 2 surgeries, I would say, but we go through their patients and then they want to leave because it's taken time to go through other surgeries. So yeah, from a time perspective, I just wonder whether it might have a bit more fluidity if it was more frequent.
Yeah, valuable insight that. I mean, yes, there's an obvious problem with getting everyone together to discuss 50 patients, isn't there? So how that, I suppose, Rachel, obvious question, what's everybody else doing?
So I think in some areas, say Seacroft and surrounding areas, their LCP, they're having a weekly MDT meeting and have it for an hour. But if it doesn't take an hour, you have time back and then sort of move on. But I think they found it really useful in terms of the continuity, bringing some reactive cases and sort of building the relationships. And then I think sort of part of the care coordination, they'll sort of prioritise like a number of patients and sort of send round a bit of a list 2 days in advance so everybody would know the planned patients that were going to be discussed. But obviously have that time at the bottom for more reactive. And I think Abs has got his hand up, might want to show you some of the network team stuff that doing elsewhere, Abs.
Yes, sure. Following up on what Rachel was saying earlier regarding who needs to be part of this MDT. I know Fiona and maybe some other colleagues were not at the last workshop where this was shared, which I'm just about to share now quickly. If you bear with me one sec. Okay, so this is similar to what is not Seacroft, Crossgate, yes. Crossgate PCN did. So I'm just going to, this is what Crossgate PCN did, and these are the partners that were involved in their, I'm not sure why I kept clicking and this kept moving, sorry. Yeah, so if you look at this page very well, you can see there is a PCN at the center, a PCN care coordinator at the center of that MDT, trying to coordinate other partners to be part of the MDT. I know from what Francis was saying as well, not all the practices might be able to attend all MDT meetings. So if having one person at the center, the frailty lead at the center to kind of like feed back to the rest of the practices that are unable to attend. So yeah, and adult social care and carers leads are also part of that, and focusing on the population one, which Wetherby is looking at. I know most of the patients that we're going to be talking about from in that moderate to severe frailty, they're going to have carers. So it will be really interesting to have carers leads part of that MDT kind of group as well, so as to provide their own support. And I know that in that last workshop, there was a conversation about those patients having mental health issues. And one of the action that was taken away was that the LCP should provide like an asset map that kind of like bring those partners that we feel are going to be key in this MDT conversation together. And that is the reason why I come up with this, which is going to be shared across. It looks really small, but you can see LMWS has been added in that MDT as well, with adult social care and housing with carers leads as well. So those are the few with the Wetherby in support for elderly wise also included in that chat. So I'm going to share this after this conversation, so as for people to have a look and think of maybe other bits that we feel might be missing and we feel needs to be part of this MDT and who needs to be leading this as well. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you. Rachel, sorry.
No, thank you, Abs. I think it was just remembering, I guess, some of those LCPs where the PCN have got a frailty team or frailty sort of service, they all sort of come together and stay for the whole MDT. But I guess in terms of where some PCNs are looking at more sort of practice-based involvement, they start trying to organise the MDTs like really tightly. So somebody from X practice might join from 10 until 10:20, and just having that care coordination. So it's like really well organised. So people sort of dip in as and when is sort of needed. And then some areas are sort of looking at having all different partners together as they have the discussions. And then in some areas, they're having sort of a more clinically focused MDT. And then they use some sort of care coordinator or social prescriber then to take some of the non-clinical needs of people to a non-clinical MDT. So we could share some information about that, but it's what feels right for Wetherby, really. It's probably not all those partners that are needed all at once. It's just knowing that you can pull them in as and when.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I think from a Wetherby practice point of view, we went down the route of trying to do a PCN-wide frailty team a few years ago, and it didn't work. And now basically pretty much everything Wetherby PCN-wise is actually practice-based. Because we found it works. It's so much easier to have it's so much easier to retain staff and have happy staff if they're part of a practice than it is if they're part of a very small team which works across 4 different practices and is being managed in a very sort of incoherent way. And we really struggled with that, and it didn't work, and it sort of fell to bits really. So the way we are now, undoubtedly, so if we are going to do this, this will be, the practices have separate, the practices are work very well on an individual basis, but what we don't have is we don't have a lot of cross practice working going on. In other words, we don't really have a single PCN care coordinator who can kind of coordinate all of this across the practices. However, individual practices do have care coordinators. And so I think if it's going to work, or the best way of doing it, if we're going to have a meeting, is that it almost is going to be, yeah, well, 10 o'clock till 10:30 Collingham, 10:30 till 11 o'clock Boston Spa, etc., etc. Now, I don't know how that works for other partners. I don't know how, certainly in terms of everybody, I guess, thinking about these meetings, it's interesting to say that, talking about an hour-long meeting on a weekly basis, what does everybody think about that because an hour-long meeting on a weekly basis probably doesn't fit that well with 4 separate care coordinators and 4 separate practices in a way. So I guess we want a model that is, it's nothing's going to be perfect for everyone, but I suppose we want the model that's most effective for most people in a way. We don't want to sit a 4-hour meeting, do we? Because that's going to, certainly, for instance, yeah, nobody's going to want to sit on the whole of a 4-hour meeting. But given the suggestions that, or what Abs and Rachel have said about the way other people are doing it, I don't know what everybody feels like a sort of pragmatic model to try. And we don't have to get it right first time. We've got to just try something, haven't we, really? Kat?
Obviously this is like a project, isn't it? This element of things. We're looking at a specific cohort, so we might have to do things slightly different just to cover for that specific cohort separately to see how we get on, and then merge the 2 together, I guess. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm happy to look at the patients and go through and see, is there any neighbourhood team input? Is there any XYZ and what we're doing with them? Just so we've got that data. I don't know if that's helpful. But I think we're going to have to, because this is a cohort, isn't it? And it's a specific project. We're probably going to have to do things slightly different to figure out what will work out in the long term. So whether we do it as a, not as the case management meeting, but as the cohort meeting. I don't know what are people's thoughts. Just it needs to be, obviously we need to do this properly, don't we? I think that we can't have all the GPs and everyone on one meeting for XYZ amount of time, but equally not everyone can sit there for the whole meeting, can they? And then others dip in and out. I don't know. Just my thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. It's, yeah. Rachel?
Yeah, I think this is definitely sort of a time for sort of test and learn and trying different things out and seeing what works for Wetherby, and sort of starting with this cohort almost as a project, but eventually evolving into this is just the way that we do things around here. So we are a proactive neighbourhood, and then we continue to build on the case management meetings. But yeah, this is the time to try different things out and learn from it as we go.
Yeah, Fiona.
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, obviously, we'd have representation from everybody at the same time, but I think it's unrealistic with the pressures that each service has individually. Kat and myself work on the home ward from time to time, and they have an MDT on a daily basis, and that covers around sort of 40 up to 55 patients. And how they structure theirs is they have a geriatrician who's consistent throughout that whole meeting. They split it into 2 meetings, so one earlier in the day, one slightly later, and they have a pharmacist at that as well. So from a perspective of this, that would be kind of like your geriatrician might be, well, your geriatrician might exist as well, but your frailty lead or your PCN lead or whoever, that one person representative, and that could be on a rotational basis, I suppose, who would sit throughout that entire meeting. And then people are given time slots to kind of log in to discuss their quota of patients. Sometimes if you can, you log on before that time slot so you catch the sort of backside of other patients that are being discussed, and you can contribute if you feel able. And then they have an admin assistant or somebody who minutes things and has any sort of follow-up too. So just from how sort of other services are working as well, whether we could build a similar sort of model into this and structure it that way, I don't know. Thoughts welcome.
That's really interesting, actually. It's really interesting to hear how the home ward do it, because it's obviously a very effective service, isn't it? And they're doing, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, you might almost ask the question, that if we're having an MDT, so that's is that the Wetherby home ward you're talking about there? When you're talking about, well, there's 40
No,
people,
that's
that's across the
citywide.
city, is that across
Yeah,
Leeds?
that's
Yeah,
citywide. The
yeah,
maximum people be
interesting.
on will be 55. And I would say, how long is it, Kat? Can you remember? I think it's from like 12 till
There's
1,
two,
half
isn't there? So
1.
the West have
There's
their
2
own,
1.5
because the West
sessions.
is massive. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's 12:30 until it's normally about 1:30.
Depends
Because
on the
it's half.
geriatrician, how
So
long
I
it
guess
takes.
yeah, it depends on the geriatrician. But I would say both meetings 2 hours, I would say. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the benefit they have is that it's a daily meeting, so it's a case of sort of quick follow on, bish bash bosh. So it's a bit
Yeah.
more streamlined in that
Mm.
sense. But I guess that's where I'm coming from with saying, would a weekly meeting be better for kind of continuity and ease of discussions than a monthly basis?
I totally. I'm sure you're right that a weekly meeting would be better, certainly in terms of trying to. I mean, you want momentum, don't you, really? And if you just do it almost on a monthly basis, it's going to be, yeah. Well, as we've already found with the list that we were given, is that half of the patients won't be any longer with us, and and the other half you won't know. And yeah, so it's definitely. But then obviously, weekly meeting, then there's a significantly more input required. So yes, I do wonder. I know Kat said, um, I do wonder if this idea of having a meeting with all the practices might be worthwhile, because I think definitely if I go to the practices and say, oh, we've got this monthly meeting and it's going to last an hour, then they'll all be, yeah, fine, we can do that. But if we think that a weekly meeting is possibly the way forward, and I can certainly see the reasons for that, then we might need to get everybody in the room, because otherwise, if I suggest a weekly meeting, then they might not go for it. So yeah, it may be worth thinking about that, definitely. Petra.
Sorry, I already put in the chat what I wanted to say. I just wanted to say that it's for us to try to see what works for us, and then adapt as we get along, really. Didn't
Thank
realize
you.
my hand was still up. Apologies for that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think we're just going to have to do something, aren't we, and see how it works and then adapt accordingly. I think this is right, definitely. Kat?
Well, when we get the new data, we might have a better idea of how to do things. And like obviously me and Fiona could probably split the data for the just to check through neighbourhood team wise, but obviously we're both happy to meet with people face to face or via MS Teams, whatever works for the majority. I would presume it's MS Teams. But if the GPs want to put on a lunch for us, and then we'll come over and have lunch with them, that's all right.
Getting down to the important stuff now, aren't we? Yeah. Okay. Great, Sean.
Yeah, it was just an offer. So Abs and I could work with Sonia, I guess, to bring all the relevant partners together to do that co-design. Maybe we could invite a couple of different partners from other areas. Maybe they could showcase how they do it in their patch, and then sort of leave us to it in terms of working through what would work for Wetherby and trying to build a consensus where we're going to start.
Definitely. I mean, who do we need on the meeting? Who wants to be on the meeting? I mean, we need general practice, community nursing teams, and I
PCN
suppose
pharmacist.
PCN pharmacists, yes.
Social care.
Adult social care. Wise. Sian, do you want to be on this? Would the carers organisations want to be involved directly in this, do you think?
I think it's really important to involve or consider carers in all of this. I'm not sure I or we could commit to weekly. I don't know. We are involved in some other non-clinical MDTs. I suppose, and you know, it's that dilemma. We really want to be involved in that, but as more and more LCPs are working on this model, the more difficult it becomes to spread ourselves across all those different areas. So I say, yes, we'd like to be involved. Need to give a bit more thought as to how. That's probably not very helpful.
That's very helpful. Yes. No, I mean it's going to be it's a commitment for everyone, and it is a new way of working, and it isn't. Yes, if you've got 19 PCNs, yeah, and we're doing weekly MDTs, that's going to be quite a lot of time commitment for you, obviously. So yeah. Okay. So what do we need to do now? I mean, I think we've got. It's interesting. It does feel that everybody thinks that maybe weekly might have significant benefits to monthly. Are we all agreed on that? That sounds maybe a more meaningful and useful format. I think probably what Sorry,
I was going to say, I think a weekly one, just make sure that we keep that momentum as well. So like a monthly one, and hopefully a weekly one would be quicker as well. You know, it's not such a long meeting that you've got that time commitment to if we do a shorter, more succinct meeting on a weekly basis, and it just keeps that momentum then as well. I mean, from an LCH perspective, myself and Joe probably can't commit to attending every single weekly meeting, but there'll be somebody from the team. So whether that's Kat, Fiona, someone else from Wetherby neighbourhood team, then we can definitely commit to that. It might be on a bit of a rotational basis.
Fine, absolutely fine. Yes. I mean, I think it sounds like maybe I need to go away. We've got PCN board meeting next week, which is obviously where that's the meeting where we've got management and GP representation from all 4 practices. And I can probably talk about this then. And we could maybe discuss how we feel it would, whether we feel we can sort of sign up to a weekly meeting. It sounds like we do need to consider, doing so, because I'm not convinced a monthly meeting is it's just not going to do what we want it to, is it? It doesn't feel like it probably, because the whole world will have changed in that month, because these patients, things change very rapidly, don't they? So yeah, so we can discuss that and we can come back, but certainly a Teams meeting with time slots for the 4 different practices, if that could be organised, that sounds like that might be a reasonable format. If that doesn't sound like the stupidest idea in the world, but then it's a question of who organises it. I think Sonia could probably help with setting it up, but I'm not sure she's going to necessarily organise it long term. But then again, we need to work. Yes. So who organises it long term? Just trying to think. I mean, yes, maybe we do. We can talk about that. We can talk about that. I think the practices do need to. It sounds like to me that I think probably most of the other organisations on this meeting, you would probably, if we did it a bit like that, would everyone be okay with that as a format? Does that sound reasonable? Pretty much. So it's really up to the GPs to go. It's up to the practices then to work out if we can do it, isn't it, really? And how we're going to do that and what the reps would be. It sounds like a GP and a care coordinator from each practice. So if we go away and I talk to them, and then we can get some sort of sign up to maybe a weekly meeting on something like a Thursday lunchtime with slots for each practice. I'm just trying to get into specifics here, otherwise nothing ever happens. So does that sound like that might work if we try to work something like that up? And then we just need to work out who's responsible for doing what, don't we, really?
Just with regards to the ongoing organisation, Francis, is it something that potentially that the care coordinators could arrange between them? I appreciate it's not just one, there's a few, but if they take it on like a bit of a rota basis between them and organise it.
That's an interesting suggestion. And that's why I was sort of umming and ahhing a bit there, just sort of thinking in my head, could that possibly work? Yes, you're right, though, because there's a possibility of that. Yeah. But again, I can't sort of sign up other practices, care coordinators to do stuff, but I suspect, that's what this is what they were employed for. So yeah, hopefully that they may be able to contribute to that process, definitely. The only problem is you 3 of the practices have got a care coordinator. One of them, namely mine, doesn't. So we need to have a think about that as well. So that's another little thing that needs to be worked through. But I mean, yeah, it's not a crazy level of commitment, I don't think. So yeah. Okay. Rachel?
Yeah, there's probably lots of different templates as well that have been generated through some of the other LCPs as well that might make things a bit easier for the care coordinators. And I guess our team and Sonia, I'm sure we'll be happy to get things sort of set up. I think it's just having that longer term vision that it does become mainstreamed and belongs to sort of somebody in the neighbourhood to organise. And then I can just see Kat's suggesting again, maybe to share the data that you've already got, maybe to do that review, who's common, who's known to both teams, who's not.
So who do I need to share that with then? Who wants the email with the, I've just got a list of the 48 patients with NHS numbers on it and practice code.
You can send it
So
to me.
yeah, I've sent it to you,
I'll try
Kat.
and
Yeah.
work out with Victoria, getting a bit of time aside to have a look.
Okay. Yes. I'll ping that through to you then, Kat. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So if I go away, we've got this meeting next Wednesday, so we can sort of talk some of this through then, and I will come back to Rachel and Abs maybe about how that's kind of gone on, and we could, if I can get sign up to a lot of that, then, and we can try and think through some of the sort of inherent slight problems with it, like, yeah, are the care coordinators going to be able to actually, yeah, are they, have they got the skills, are they willing and able to do that? Are GPs going to be able to, you know, reliably, you know, be there at lunchtime? And if we can get through all of that, then I'll come back to you, and then maybe we could sort of, you know, it might be another meeting then just to actually talk about, you know, real specifics like start date, this, that, and the other, I suppose.
Yeah, if you let us know, Francis, and yeah, depending on which direction it goes, we could just put a quick 30 minutes in, hopefully to put the final touches on. If the practice is not up for that, we discuss what next, or what was the, yeah. Let's hope
Cool.
that they agree, yeah. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's always a bit of harumph, but you know, that's sure we can, I'm sure it's doable, definitely. Yeah, it has to be, doesn't it, in some form anyway? So yeah. Okay. Anyone got anything else they want to say? Petra is typing. Are you not typing? No. No, I just had a little message. No, right, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was typing. I
All
just said
right,
I was
okay.
gonna say thank you, everyone. A very productive meeting
Oh, no.
today.
Very good. All right, no, thank you for that. All right. So yeah, we'll meet again, obviously. Keep pushing it on. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Cheers.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.